Well, everybody knows that I like to talk about creatures.
Everybody.
Well, everybody that listens to this. Well, and everybody who knows me in real life, because I have a lot of strange conversations, and that's how we got here anyway.
Bill is a monster lover.
I like monsters. And I heard about this one on another podcast and kind of did a little digging. I'd already seen the name pop up a few times, but hadn't looked into it very much. And this is a weird creature that terrorized a small community in Illinois some time ago. A weird three-legged monstrosity. I mean, really, when I think of this thing, I think of like Warhammer monsters and stuff like that.
It's unique. Very unique.
It is a unique creature. And, you know, much like the Van Meter visitor that we once talked about, there's not a whole lot here, but we kind of, you know, I dug a little bit and I found some information. I even found maybe some sightings potentially related to this that, you know, may help talk about the Enfield Horror.
From a child born into this world, we are taught what to believe. Closed-minded we become, fearful to be deceived. Still we desire to know what lies beyond that locked door. The art of the storyteller, conjuring tales of legend and lore. History hidden, lost knowledge, things forgotten and the unknown. These are the things that direct us and will set the tone. Welcome, friends, to another episode of Nightmares on the Lost Highway.
Again, just to kind of reiterate, every now and then we find these creatures that have, there's not much about it. Like the Van Meter visitor, I think
One
it was,
night affair,
yeah,
like a 2 or 3 at most, yeah.
So the Enfield Horror is very similar in that there was just a few sightings over just a couple of days in Illinois. A strange creature, to say the least. And I think as we get to the end of the episode, we're going to look at this and we're going to say, okay, now what was this thing?
What was this?
And as we were talking before we recorded, I think we both kind of agree that we lean in one direction, and we'll go through the whole story, and then we'll get to that point. Now, since I always want to do Eric proud and I want to impress him with things, Enfield was a quiet farming community in the heart of White County, Illinois.
Nice history.
In 1973, the town's population was right about 750 people. It was a quiet town. Everybody knew their neighbors, and everything was considered pretty normal. The kind of town where you wouldn't lock your doors at night necessarily. And, you know, it's a shame. I'll do it a little aside here, but I remember growing up in those days where you didn't necessarily lock your door when you went to bed at night.
As do I.
And you knew your neighbors. And I mean, even me right now, I know my neighbors to see them, but I'm not friends with them. We don't hang out. We don't have dinners.
It's not the same, because beforehand, like, neighbors would even know your schedule.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're like, well, I got some nosy neighbors. But on the other hand, they'll be like, hey, right after you left for work the other day, there was this kind of beat up old pickup truck that came around. They would come tell you that kind of stuff.
If somebody showed up poking around when they knew you were at work or whatever, you know, which, you know, God bless my wife. She's actually that way with the neighbors. And so, like, if we're out of town or whatever, during we were in Tennessee one year and a big storm knocked down a branch and landed on our roof and did some damage. And they called us and said, hey, just wanted to let you know. And had cleared out most of it by the time we got home even.
Oh, so, wow.
I've got good neighbors. I'm just not a super sociable person. But
Bill has good neighbors. He's just not a good neighbor.
Anyway, things in Enfield were considered pretty normal right up until the night of April 25th, 1973. While his parents were inside watching TV, 10-year-old Greg Garrett was in his backyard on the night of April 25th. He was out there catching fireflies.
I've done that when I was little.
Have you seen, I saw a headline the other day. Man, I feel like
that they're bringing back Firefly?
Well, maybe. I haven't seen that. No, this may be the last generation to actually see fireflies.
To have fireflies.
Crazy.
Because, our pesticides and stuff keep wiping out their domain.
Well, anyway, 10-year-old Greg Garrett was out in his backyard catching fireflies and playing under the stars. You know, like you do when you're a kid. When he claimed he had been attacked by a strange beast. Now, he described this thing as having kind of a short, squat, stout body with 3 legs that all had clawed feet, with one of those legs being smaller than the other 2. Said it had grayish, slimy skin with short little clawed arms on its chest, like you imagine with a T-Rex.
A T-Rex, that's exactly what I was envisioning. Got tiny arms.
And red eyes. The boy claimed that the thing stomped on his feet as it charged by him, which tore his tennis shoes to shreds.
I thought that was very...
kind of a weird note.
Yeah, out of anybody's testimonies of encountering anything, I've never heard that, hey, the cryptid got so close to me, it stepped on my shoes and ripped my shoes. I mean, that's pretty close.
Though, if you got that close.
That's close.
Well, horribly scared, as I think any of us would be under the circumstances, he ran in screaming and crying to the safety of his home. And when he got in there, he told his parents what had happened, and they believed him. They said little Greg wasn't the kind of kid to make up stories as far as they were concerned. And so they called the police. Well, police showed up, but they weren't able to find any evidence of the creature. Now, young Greg's alleged encounter, and I'll get into that here in a little while, but young Greg's alleged encounter may be the first encounter with this creature, but it is the story of one Henry McDaniel that is the one that brought this creature into the public eye and really brought the Enfield Horror to light.
I'm going to stop you there because I'm hoping I wasn't the only one stupid enough when you brought this story to me. Maybe I want to relate this to somebody. There's the Enfield Horror.
And the Enfield Poltergeist.
And the Enfield Poltergeist. And to Bill's point, when he started, he goes, it's a smaller, there's not a lot to it, but it's a good story, but it's a smaller story. Well, I punched in Enfield, and my gosh, my computer goes nuts.
It's been so long since we recorded. I think I made sure to stress the Enfield Horror.
You did.
It is a creature.
You did. I went back and looked at my notes, and it said Enfield Horror. So I'm like, is there two? Obviously, yes, there is.
The Enfield Poltergeist is from England.
And that,
I believe it was
Ed and Lorraine Warren
case, which we may talk about someday.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're
part of the whole Conjuring movie trilogy. But anyhow, sorry to interrupt.
So the McDaniels were neighbors to the Garretts. I think they lived, one behind the other. And about at 9:30 at night, that same night, the Henry and his wife came home, and they were greeted by their two children, Henry Jr. and Lil. The children were terrified.
Petrified, yes.
And just needed to tell the parents what had happened while they were gone. They told their parents about how something, I'll say that in quotes, had tried to get into the house. First, it tore at the screen door and then scratching at the front door, and then later by trying to climb through a window over a window-mounted AC unit. It had scratched around the house, they said, for about 20 minutes or so when the parents' headlights pulled into the drive. I guess at that point, maybe scaring the thing away. Now, the parents, assuming, of course, it was some sort of stray animal, they did their best to calm the children down. While they were trying to reason with the children, they began to hear the scratching at the front door again.
He came back.
Now, Henry, I guess he looked out a window or maybe something like that, but he saw something he thought might be a bear, which would be uncommon for Illinois still, but, I mean, yeah, he saw something. But when he opened the door, standing there at the front door was something entirely not a bear. In Henry's own words, it had 3 legs on it, a short body, 2 little short arms, and 2 pink eyes as big as flashlights. It stood 4.5 feet tall and was grayish colored. It was trying to get into the house. Now later, he also added that it was almost like a human body in appearance, like I guess the color maybe or the shape. Now horrified, again as you would be, he slammed the door. He went back. There was a table, I think, by the door. In it, he kept a .22 pistol and a flashlight. So he rummaged around. He got those 2 items, and a brave man. He went back to the front door.
And he does the same thing all Americans do.
Yeah,
shoot at it. We don't know what it is.
Threw the door open, and he fired 4 shots at the thing, which was now give or take about 12 feet from the house. Now he said he knew he had hit the creature with at least his first shot, but that the creature didn't seem to react to the gunshot at all, other than to hiss like a wildcat before fleeing toward the nearby railroad tracks.
There's one of the first hints of a sound.
Yeah.
Hisses like a wildcat.
Now, it was about 75 feet from where the creature was to the railroad tracks, which he said the creature made in 3 big leaps.
Yeah, this thing is like leaping, jumping, like the Hulk kind of thing, just covering massive areas.
Yeah, and after those 3 big jumps, it then disappeared into the brush near the railroad embankment. Well, McDaniel called the authorities, who did find footprints near the house. They were described as dog-like in shape, but with 6 toe pads instead of 4. Now, 2 of the tracks were 4 inches wide, with a smaller print left by the 3rd foot, the 3rd smaller leg. They also found a series of scratches in the siding of the house. Now, police reported that McDaniel, at the time, seemed to be rational and sober. Of course, they absolutely doubted his story. They weren't sure what was going on. McDaniel would later go on to tell a newspaper reporter that some school children told him that they had seen a similar creature at the school ballpark sometime earlier. Now, 2 weeks later, this would be May 6th, McDaniel called into WWKI radio and claimed to have seen the creature a second time, that time 3 a.m. of that day. He had been awakened in the night by the barking of his neighbor's dogs. So he climbed out of bed and, remembering his last encounter, grabbed his gun, just in case. He went to the front door, and in an act of either extreme bravery or extreme stupidity, he opened that door and again saw the creature by the train tracks near his home, walking down the tracks, until it finally bounced away into the darkness. Now, again, in his words, I saw something moving out on the railroad track, and there it stood. I didn't shoot at it or anything. It started on down the railroad track. It wasn't in a hurry. Now, after that call, and this is I think this is one of the more colorfully named people of this story, Rick Rainbow.
Oh, Rick Rainbow, yes, of the radio station.
Director of radio station WWKI, and 3 of his friends explored the area later that day and reported seeing an ape-like creature about 5.5 feet tall, gray, and stooped over, running through the woods near an abandoned home, not far from both the Garrett and McDaniel homes. So,
yeah, again, this is all very close proximity, within just a few miles of each other.
Rainbow and his friends said the creature moved with unnatural speed and was quickly gone from sight. Rick also claimed that he made recordings of the creature making a banshee-like shriek as it fled. And someone in the group admitted to firing a shot at it as it ran away.
This poor thing.
Now, the same strange shrieks, that's a tongue twister. Those same strange shrieks were heard by others over the next several days, especially in the area of the railroad tracks close to the McDaniel home. Now, after his call to the radio station, word of the Enfield Horror started to spread. The story grew, as stories like this tend to do. And people began coming to Enfield eager to see the creature. Now, afraid that his little town was becoming a circus of media and tourists, Sheriff Roy Poshard Jr., and I hope I got the last name there, he warned McDaniel to keep his mouth shut about the horror, or he would have to incarcerate him in the best interest of the town.
You shut your dirty mouth.
Yeah, that seems extreme. A follow-up story in the Evansville Press dated June 10th quoted an anonymous deputy who said, I've done my best to get him locked up. So they really thought they needed to lock McDaniel up. Now, would-be monster hunters flooded into Enfield, with crowds getting so big that the locals began to get concerned. On May 8th, police were called to investigate reports of gunfire and arrested 5 young men from out of town that had come to find the creature, hoping to get pictures of it. They, of course, arrived armed with shotguns and rifles for protection. 2 of the hunters, Mike Mogul and Roger Tappy, both claimed to have seen the creature, with Tappy telling newspaper reporters, quote, I was scared. It was maybe 50 yards away and covered in brush. I figured the thing to do was shoot it in the foot. I fired off a shot, but I don't think I hit it. Nothing can move that fast with a bullet in it. Mogul,
and if you've had a few beers.
Yeah. Mogul backed up Tappy's claims. Quote, it was maybe 5 feet tall and kind of darkish gray and hair with a flat face, kind of running like crazy and ugly. Now, these guys were about 3 miles from the McDaniel home. So again, that real small local area. And they were walking down the same railroad tracks that ran by McDaniel's house.
I was about to say, if you're following a railroad track 3 miles, it's level, it's flat, it's open. I mean, that you could make some good time.
Yeah. The group kind of in general described the creature as something like a gray monkey. Now, seeming unharmed again by being shot at, the creature moved off through the underbrush at incredible speed, like they said. And they added that it was covered in hair, which was missing from previous descriptions.
And you've mentioned different colors of hair a little bit too. Like this one, this last one, I think was more of I'll say a blonder kind of deal. And the other was almost sounded like it could have been a gray or a mangy.
Gray was the original color description.
You know, some of the deals I read was like splotches of hair was missing. So, you know.
Well, after bringing these guys in, the White County Sheriff Poshard said they were exaggerating and they had been drinking. Quote, those kids were out there shooting at anything that moved. Ever since this creature business got started, we've had people milling around here with guns and drinking, and if I don't put a stop to it, somebody's going to get killed. People around here are afraid to let their kids out at night, and not because of the monster, it's because they're afraid the kids will get shot. There isn't any monster. You know, and he would also later add, Nothing I know of is in season now, especially monsters. Anybody we know of out hunting monsters, especially with guns, will be put in jail. We're afraid they'll kill somebody.
Now, I did do a bit of a deep dive, and I wanted to see if there was any possible mention of this creature showing up prior to the ones that you mentioned. And one of the things I did notice was this kind of skips around a little bit. You might have some time frames where you don't have anything. Suggestion is there, maybe it moved on a little bit further, went deeper into the woods or whatever. But on a related note, in that history that I did, the Enfield Horror actually occurred in an area of, as Bill has said, southern Illinois, that was known as the Devil's Kitchen. Now, that actually stems back to white man's first encounters with Native American peoples there. And it was one that had been left behind by those Native Americans and early settlers to explain what they had as strange sightings and sounds, which included balls of glowing light, apparitions, screams in the middle of the night, and various other unsettling type phenomenon. Again, it was so far back, there's not a lot of newspaper clippings or anything. It's hearsay, a lot of it. But I did find that, so we do have Native Americans that were on this same property. For whatever reason, they were calling it Devil's Kitchen, and they kind of slapped that Devil's Kitchen label on there for basically anything that occurred there that they thought was odd or weird or peculiar. So, was it the same? There's no actual mentions of a, multi-legged, short-armed creature, so I don't know, but wanted to throw that out there. Now, we do have eyewitnesses in the 1940s in Mount Vernon, in the Enfield Township, described the creature as a baboon-like, saying it could leap large distances, covering up to 50 feet in just 3 steps.
And I think that is why people attach that story to the Enfield Horror story, because of the leaping,
massive jumping distances.
Covering a lot of distance.
Now, these explanations included a possible escaped monkey, or a kangaroo from a zoo. And we've talked about that. We actually, here last month, we were recording this, like, how many of these crazy circus train stories are there? How many of these trains got derailed and, creatures escaped? Well, that again was one of the possibilities here. But nothing again could ever be proven. And certainly it would not explain the mutilation of cattle that started occurring at the Mount Vernon incidences.
The Mount Vernon story is similar in some ways, but it's just different enough that it's hard to say that it's
you
the
could
same
say
thing.
It could be, but there's just as much to say that it probably wasn't.
Yeah. Well, speaking of kangaroos, some claimed that the creature was an escaped kangaroo, especially when Ohio man Alan Yorkshire contacted the authorities of Enfield, claiming that his own pet kangaroo, Macy, had escaped or been stolen about a year earlier. However, and this is a really weird, strange thing here, McDaniel had been stationed in Australia during World War II and had a pet kangaroo. And so he was
the man knows kangaroos.
Yeah, he was quick to point out that he knew what a kangaroo looked like. He would recognize one if he saw it. And the creature he saw was not a kangaroo. Since in his basing it on his description, of course, kangaroos have narrow faces and leave distinctive clawed tracks. If I remember correctly, though, McDaniel argued it wasn't a kangaroo before Alan Yorkshire came forward to say that he had an escaped or missing kangaroo. So it was almost like he was preemptively saying, what I saw wasn't a kangaroo.
Yeah. No.
It wasn't it. Others suggested maybe it was some sort of ape, noting there were reports of wild apes throughout the Mississippi area since 1941. But of course, the description, this 3-legged, hairless, sometimes hairless creature.
But again, if you had any type of a domesticated or a circus animal captured, that's not its normal domain. You're probably not going to find it in pristine health and condition.
Well,
you know what I mean? So I could definitely envision like a kangaroo or a monkey, but I mean, its hair's a mess, maybe even mangy, covered in mud, covered in dirt. But the small leg to me sounds an awful lot like a tail.
Yeah.
And it would leave
T-Rex
a track
arms
in their trails. Like
you get the little T-Rex arms. I mean, I know kangaroos are jacked when you look at them.
Yeah.
But those arms in relation to the legs,
they're very small. And 2 mighty big legs, and then this tail that they kind of used to help balance themselves when they're running around and jumping. So again, that would leave a weird looking trail to follow.
Now, McDaniel himself suspected the creature was some sort of alien. And in his own words, if they do find it, they will find more than one, and they won't be from this planet. I can tell you that. Now, during this same time period, UFO sightings were on the rise across the country. I think we had touched on the 70s UFO sightings. Now, none other than renowned cryptozoologist Loren Coleman would come and investigate this particular case, and he had the opportunity to listen to Rick Rainbow's recordings.
Rick Rainbow, I love that name.
In the July 1974 issue of Fate magazine, Loren Coleman and Jerome Clark featured the horror in an article entitled, and I like this, Swamp Slobs Invade Illinois.
Swamp Slobs Invade Illinois.
And Coleman would later say, I have traveled to Enfield, interviewed the witnesses, looked at the siding of the house the Enfield monster had damaged, heard some strange screeching, banshee-like sounds, and walked away bewildered. He also stated that many locals weren't super interested in talking to him. People won't talk about it. It's like the Twilight Zone. There is a sinister conspiracy of silence there. You know, we said this was sort of isolated to just a few days, maybe the incident at Mount Vernon, but could the Enfield Horror still be out there?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Reddit.
Good old Reddit. Good old Reddit.
One Redditor claimed that while driving near Terre Haute, Indiana, his girlfriend nearly hit a strange creature. And when she told him about it, she would describe a creature that had 3 legs.
Oh, here we go
and
again.
Looked very much like the Enfield Horror.
And what time frame is this?
It doesn't say specifically when, but it said she had never heard of the Enfield Horror before he told her about it after hearing the description. So she had nothing to base that on. Of course, he recognized the description immediately and told her, like, oh, that sounds just like the Enfield Horror. Now, another Redditor related a story from late May of 1986. So this is,
there's a day.
They did say that they had never heard of the story of the Enfield Horror before their encounter. So again, nothing to base it off of, no preconceived notion.
Again, 10, 15 years has passed.
Yeah. It said he and his wife were helping her parents move into their new home in Enfield. Just right there.
There we are again.
After a day of moving furniture and boxes, they were, of course, justifiably tired. But despite exhaustion, the parents had a little dog, and that little dog needed to go out.
Know how that goes.
If you have a little dog,
yes, I do.
You got to take him out.
Yes.
So, of course, being the nice son-in-law that he was, and just wanting, I think, probably to get a break from everybody, he said, I'll take the dog for a walk.
He took the dog out and fed it to the Enfield Horror.
Well, he takes the dog out. He said this was around 9:45. He takes off down the street with this little dog. And he says as the dog was doing its duty, he was looking around, kind of taking in the sights of this town he'd never been to before. And he noticed 2 large reddish-orange eyes staring at him from the trees not too far away.
Not creepy at all.
So, doing what we would all do, I think, he tugged on the leash and began to hurry back up the road. A few moments later, he heard a thud and a scratching noise like nails or claws on the pavement behind him. He turned around and caught a glimpse of something dashing out of the trees where he had seen the eyes. This prompted him to hurry even faster down the road. And then the little dog stops. And it's looking off in the distance and seems obviously distressed or scared, whatever, and starts pulling on its leash, heading in the direction of home. Now, before they could get to the house, the dog stopped again and stared at something not too far away. And it was then that he saw the thing cross the road. And he said, in his words, emphasis on the word thing. He didn't recognize this. He described it as gray, hairy, with unnatural arms, and looking as if it walked on 3 legs.
Mm-hmm.
When he got back to the house, he said his wife could tell that something had happened, but he didn't want to tell her or the parents, afraid it would freak them out. And it wasn't until years later that he told them the story. And the in-laws said, luckily, they hadn't seen anything like that in the years since they had moved in, so they hadn't had any encounters. So like many towns with crazy monster sightings, Enfield has passed the story down the generations and has become a source of pride and amusement. And the encounters put Enfield on the map as a point of interest for cryptid enthusiasts from around the world. The horror has created a small-scale tourist trade for the town, and they even now host memorial activities in memory of the sightings. So Eric and I were talking before we started here, and we can and we'll give you some examples, but I think we both lean towards the kangaroo thing, if only because he was playing some sounds of kangaroo noises before we got started, and they make little chittering sounds. there's some sounds that almost sound like squirrels barking.
There was a hissing.
There's a hiss.
Which was brought up in a couple of the stories.
A rumbling growl.
That growl was intense. I don't care who you are. If you're out in the woods at dark and you hear that growl, yeah, you're about to be dead. Well, and I was going to ask, in the stories and the research that you've done, if you want to consider some of the early ones, cattle mutilations were mentioned. Have you ever, in the history of what you have done, seen what it eats? What is speculated to eat?
There was no reference to that. Not in what I found.
A kangaroo eats mostly, grass and leaves and shrubs and, maybe a few grubs and stuff, but they're not meat eaters. So that's a little different.
A cornered kangaroo can absolutely lash out. And I guess those hind claws on those legs, combined with the powerful muscles.
I think they can be quite defensive of their young too. So if they had a little joey, a little baby, and something came around it, I guess. But
well, like we said, this encounter with the Enfield Horror, there wasn't a whole lot going on. It was just sort of isolated to a few days. I think Rick Rainbow is probably the most colorful name, at least. But when you get Loren Coleman involved, and he says that there was something there, he's sort of regarded as one of those, kind of grandfathers of modern cryptozoology.
Yeah. And I do truly believe they saw something.
No, they saw something.
I mean, imagine. Definitely.
Now, those good old boys out taking pot shots and something, maybe they didn't see anything.
Yeah.
I would assume, like any situation like this, you definitely had some folks out there with a few beers in them, and, something moves in the bushes and they take a shot at it.
And children are hard because one can feed off of the other, and one gets spooked. The other one's going to get spooked.
Well, speaking of children, that little, was it Greg Garrett?
Yes, little Greg.
He would eventually come out and say that his story
was totally...
His story never came out until McDaniel's story did. And he said that he literally was just kind of taking a jab at McDaniel's.
Yeah.
And that his encounter never happened. He just copied what McDaniel said. Although I do believe that the shoes were shredded. So,
the shoes were shredded.
What did
actually
he do?
Found pictures of the shoes. But I will say they could have also just been really, really worn out and ripped.
Yeah. But he would have.
That was one of the newspaper articles said, little boy just wants a new pair of shoes or something, like that.
Yeah, I saw that in multiple places where he came forward to say that
Bill,
he made it up.
Do you remember being a 10-year-old, and would you have begrudgingly come up with a story to kind of poke fun at someone
at your neighbor?
At your neighbor
no,
at 10 years old?
That seems kind of
especially
vindictive for a little kid.
I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm not giving little Greg or whatever enough credit, but that to me almost sounds like something a teenager would do or a young adult or something.
But I will say, like, the town's reaction to the whole thing seems a little weird, and like they were going to lock McDaniel up if he kept
shut
talking
up,
about
don't
it.
talk about it.
That seems strange to me.
And they didn't want what happened. They didn't want a whole bunch of people trompsing around in their town, and that's, of course, exactly what they got. Unfortunately, Enfield's a lot like these other little small towns. They don't have a lot going on for them besides that, so it's...
They kind of jump on whatever, and so, now they embrace it, which is fine, make some money off of it, go for it.
Yeah.
I can't blame them. So.
Well, Bill, is it time for headlines?
I always try to pick headlines that are involved in some way to the topic at hand. Mine is from 100.9 The Eagle by none other than Doc Holliday.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Rick Rainbow.
No, Doc Holliday.
Doc Holliday. I've actually listened to some of his stuff.
Dated September 15th, 2025. Strange creature spotted at Illinois Girl Scout camp, woman claims. So, talking about little Gary there, children have vivid imaginations, but what happens when the stories heard when we're younger are confirmed when we're older?
Ooh.
That's what happened in Illinois, as a woman's memory of a huge creature at a Girl Scout camp has now been corroborated by many witnesses. Camp Palos was a Girl Scout camp in Illinois that was active until 2016. That was located near vast areas of unexplored forest to the northeast. There's a new eyewitness testimony that was just shared by the Bigfoot Society on YouTube, and they described the story that was told to them. You'll meet a Girl Scout who saw Bigfoot vanish in the woods of Orland Hills, and a man whose father, a trucker, saw a creature with fur and a jacket tapping on his door in the middle of the night. I got to admit, when I first wrote that down, that jacket part escaped me. And I wrote it like, I guess I forgot. Now, she had her own stories of what she saw when she was younger in the early 2000s. I was a kid. I went to Girl Scout camp. This was in Orland Hills. I remember the group of girls I was with, they kept saying that somebody saw a Bigfoot in the woods. And she would eventually have her own experience on a hike. I swear, I saw a brown one sitting. I turned to talk to somebody to see if anybody else had seen it. I turned back around and it was just gone. Now, she initially dismissed these memories of the creature at the Girl Scout camp as just a childhood imagination getting carried away. But now she's learned that there are many others who claim to have seen huge creatures in the same wooded areas where that Girl Scout camp used to be. And the host of the Bigfoot Society confirmed that he's located many testimonies from that region. So there's something in the area.
Something there.
And Bigfoot makes a screeching sound, according to some stories. Not that I'm saying the Enfield Horror was a Bigfoot. But.
No. Well, for my headline, I just went straight to the source, Enfield, Illinois. And, I was kind of leading into this a little bit. What's Enfield, Illinois known for? Nothing, really.
Yeah.
Besides the Enfield Horror, which they obviously don't want to be associated with, to a point that it just actually celebrated its 104th anniversary in a celebration that they call Mule Days. So instead of taking in the monster, they're going with Mule, playing it safe.
The town I went to high school in had Cow Days.
Cow Days. Cowpoke Days or just Cow Days?
Just Cow Days.
Just Cow Days. Just bring your cow to work or school or...
I used to play vampire, and I took the idea of Cow Days and I turned it into a pagan celebration dedicated to the bull-headed god of racial purity. And if you knew the town I grew up in, that doesn't sound too far-fetched.
Yep. Well, I will say they are trying to do tribute to Enfield, Illinois. The earliest history that I could find, the area used to be known as 7 Mile Prairie. The 7 Mile Prairie community, which formed basically as settlers migrated from Kentucky and Tennessee, started back in about 1810. Now, the village of Enfield itself was later platted about 1853, so just before the Civil War time frame. Moving west, now, this was the thought, that by moving west, they anticipated that railroad would soon arrive by 1872, and they didn't miss it by a lot. Early prominent families included the Orrs, O-R-R-S, who built a log cabin, a T-frame house, and started a general store and also an undertaking business. So for the little tiny podunk town of Enfield, the Orrs seem to, might as well say, own it.
I was going to say, they were the big family in town.
Now, the whole area is filled with Irish and German immigrants who kind of started settling that area in the 1830s and 1840s predominantly. So they adopted the Mule Days for obvious reasons, bringing all the immigrants and stuff here. But I do think it's a shame that they have missed out on the opportunity that so many of the other little towns are seeing some thriving and some business and getting some commerce coming in from embracing their monstrous stories. But
well, in light of this particular story and the fact that we believe that it may have been just simply a kangaroo in case of mistaken identity, do you have a story of an encounter with a perfectly ordinary creature of some kind that at first, like when you first started to have the encounter, you were just like, I don't know what this is, and it freaked you out or whatever, or just something like relatively normal?
Yeah. Right where we live at now, we used to have quite a lot of chickens. I'd forgot to go put them up one night. So it was after dark, went out to the backyard, and we have a couple of those, they're like city lights that are off the street, which kind of illuminate it. But it was like one of those horror movies when you come out, it's kind of foggy, and then all of a sudden you see this giant shadow just cover the entire backyard. And you're envisioning like this giant bird of prey, that's 12-foot wingspan or pterodactyl or something. And it happened in a split second, and I'm like, what was that? Where did it go? The chickens started going off like crazy. So I got out there. I thought, well, something's in the chicken house. So I go out there, and there is this great horned owl.
Ooh.
And they are a relatively large bird. This one was every bit of 2 foot tall. and just perched up in a tree limb, just as pretty as could be, rotating its head around, looking. Of course, it was what had the chickens upset because they will take out chickens, ducks, whatever. But that thing had flown in, I guess, above my head. Just a second, I stepped out the back door and just blackened the whole backyard with its wings. And it moved so gracefully, so quietly. There wasn't a sound. So had that been a giant pterodactyl, I would not be sitting here today. How about you?
Not me in particular, but that question brought to mind a thing. Since it started to get cold, we've had a problem with mice getting in our house, and it's been exceptionally bad this year. Like most years, we don't have. Season. Most year we don't have any, or maybe like one. But I think we've had this ridiculous mouse problem. But we just keep getting mouse after mouse. Luckily, we're not like overrun or anything. We get one, and then we catch it, and then things are quiet for a while.
It's no better living kind of in the country with fields adjacent to your property. Yeah,
but we were, I don't know, maybe we're watching TV or something. And my daughter was going to the bathroom, and as she's walking down the hallway, she saw something, and she comes back, and she's like, "I saw something downstairs," and because we got like 3 steps. We say downstairs, it's 3 steps, but in our utility room. We're like, what was it? And she goes, oh, it was like, and I think she used the word goblin.
Goblin?
I think if she didn't use it, we definitely, jumped to that conclusion based on her description. But she was like, I don't know, it was like a thing, and it was like crouched over, and it was like running on the floor, and it was covered in hair.
Okay, yeah.
And it was like how big was it? She's like, I don't know, it was kind of big, but it wasn't like big, but it was the way she was describing it.
Bigger
was
than a mouse.
Not a mouse.
Yeah.
And then it was just like, I don't know, like later on we were watching TV and we saw it dart behind the entertainment center or whatever. We're like, oh, she saw a mouse. But it was like for a minute I was like, my daughter absolutely saw a goblin or something, or gremlin or whatever.
Right before she goes to bed, make sure you leave Dobby a sock. Well, I've got a question for you. Growing up, both of us in small towns, all towns are known for something. I'll answer my question of what Lebanon, Missouri is known for. Well, I was born and raised here. And back in the 80s, I will say we were the used car dealers of the universe, I think.
Still is.
And unfortunately, with that came a bad rep thanks to some news broadcasts of the odometer capital rollback of the world.
All right.
Then later on, thank goodness, we kind of shunned that. And then we became kind of the Playcraft, Bass Tracker, Landau, Low, aluminum boat capital of the world, if you will. And then most recently, of course, we've had the horrible cannibal deals that nobody's going to want to be known for. But that was a little further away from us. But so in your little hometown, what do you think it was known for best?
We moved a couple of times, so I have a couple of little hometowns. When I reflect on what I consider hometown, that's where I graduated high school at. I think a lot of people do that.
Right.
Went to Lakeway, lived in Lakeway for a good long time, though. That's not where I graduated. Of course, Lakeway is not known for much of anything, but I do remember it being a place where they had checkpoints set up for John David Brown, which we talked about in the John David Brown episode.
Yes.
Now, for Dixon, and this is going to sound bad, I'm not trying to slander a town or anything, but at least when I was growing up there, sort of had a reputation for being not racially diverse, and,
gotcha.
To the point where there was a black kid that I went to school with. His name was Mike, and he would routinely joke about being part of the Klan, and that was his way of keeping from being like beat up. They were not very friendly to people, and they were kind of known for that. And
no, you talking like they full dressed up and everything?
I don't know about that.
Okay,
no. Are you saying Mike did that? No.
Like, was there KKK or people in white gowns?
That.
And okay,
but like it
was just the feel.
Well, a good example is there was a second family, a colored family that moved in. I don't know, junior year maybe. And I think after like 2 or 3 months, like I just remember he didn't come back. And I even remember asking people like, hey, what happened to the new kid? And they're just like, oh, well, he didn't really fit in.
Didn't feel welcome.
So, the only way people in a minority were going to fit in was if they were outspoken, kind of in a way like they definitely had to have a thick skin and stand up for themselves. or joke quite a bit.
See, I had never heard that about Dixon.
And then there was a little bit of police corruption.
Well, I think every little town,
every small town pretty much deals with that. Yeah. But it was like, everybody would joke that the sheriff in town knew where the drugs were being dealt and had his finger in the pot and all that. So, which is funny though, because I did see a headline not all that long ago that revealed that the sheriff, who was not the same sheriff that was in charge when I was there, did get busted for some corruption and
for those exact things,
making charges disappear and stuff like that. Oops. So I would say they're probably still known for that.
It's no longer slander if you can prove it.
Yeah, if you can prove it, it's true.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and like you said, I think a lot of small towns get that same rap, unfortunately.
In all fairness, we all have skeletons in our closet, so to speak. Every city's the same way.
Well, when it's a small community and everybody knows everybody, and maybe half the town is related to you in some capacity, and it's like, well, we picked him up, but we're just gonna make that ticket disappear. But yeah, like I think that the rumor in town cranked that up quite a bit to like, yeah, he's dealing drugs and he's doing this, that, and the other. And I have heard tell that there was like a pretty hardcore like drug trafficking site outside of Dixon at one point.
I had heard about a little bar up there that supposedly was kind of a front, and they ran guns and drugs for Hell's Angels.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was much truth in that.
Yeah, I wouldn't know about that.
It came from a cop, so I will say that much. But again, I wasn't up in that area. It wasn't during the time frame, but I guess that shows I was at least minding my own business here in Lebanon and not poking around somewhere where I shouldn't. But.
Well, again, it's just one of those little bitty towns. There wasn't much there when I lived there. I think it had like a couple of small grocery stores and like Casey's. If you wanted pizza, you had to go to Casey's, and back then Casey's Pizza was not that great. So, but yeah, like I said, I think a lot of the small towns get that kind of bad, especially here in Missouri. For some reason, it seems pretty common. Actually, for both of those particular problems, the racial stuff and the
Lebanon's had some. I'm not gonna lie.
And
I know the KKK tried to march in one of our Christmas parades. Wow. Like when I was a teenager, they were not allowed. But then we were all fearful about what the retaliation was going to be. They ended up burning some crosses and some stuff.
Wow.
And this would have been like in the very early 80s. It was just like, I remember even as a kid, I would have been like 12 years old. Yeah. And it'd be like, this stuff still is going on.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that was still happening.
But it did.
Well, again, there were rumors. I don't know if there was any truth to it, but, that something similar happened to that family, and that's why they moved. And again, those were just rumors, high school rumors. So, nothing was...
It's so easy to fill in the gaps.
Yeah, well, especially in a situation where a minority family feels the need to move out of a small community like that already has kind of a reputation. So
it's kind of like the Enfield. There's something going on there. We just don't really know what it is. But Bill and I are going to put our little bet on the kangaroo.
I really think that's what it is.
I do.
When you think about the sounds and really, like I said, McDaniel seemed really quick to go, oh, it wasn't a kangaroo.
Yeah, it wasn't a kangaroo.
Well, maybe, I don't know. Again, he should have known what it looked like.
He should have.
He seemed like he had a good alibi, but maybe he did see one and then that was just his cover story. He also at one point in time said he had like a photographic memory, but he didn't say photographic. He used another word.
Yeah.
And people were like, oh, so he would absolutely remember what a kangaroo looked like. But again, it seems like that was almost a cover. Like, oh, it wasn't a kangaroo. I know what kangaroos look like.
It makes you wonder if he didn't have something to do with it. With a kangaroo, that's a very uncommon animal. I mean, come on for around here. So if you got that and you want to, I don't know, raise some cane and stir up the pot, turn your kangaroo loose, a couple weeks beforehand and go from there. But, well, we hope that you've enjoyed tonight's story. Forgive our ramblings and our small town communities. But sometimes when these stories don't have a lot there, we just try to tie them into things that we relate to. And maybe possibly some of you listeners out there do as well. We appreciate and love and thank each and every one of you out there for listening and chiming in with us. Feel free to drop us comments, and we could not do this without you. Thank you so much for listening.
I want to take a time to thank the people that helped bring this all together. Alex Tudor, you can almost call him our producer at this point. Sarah Tudor, who also helps with some of the technical stuff. I want to take a moment to extend thanks to Eric for letting us use his space to record in, kind of our makeshift studio.
I, in turn, would like to thank Bill for, one, putting up with me and using this camaraderie to do something we both very much love and enjoy doing, and thank Bill's family for allowing him to spend all the time to work and clean up our recordings and present them in what you hear in the final terms, the final edition, if you will.
And I'd like to thank all of you for continuing to listen. I know we've got some loyal followers out there. We do this as a labor of love, but we're happy that there are people that enjoy it hopefully as much as we do.
Thank you very much.
Hey, real quick, call to action. I think Eric would agree. We'd like to grow this. Nightmares on the Lost Highway.
Absolutely.
If you could, if you're listening on Apple, if you would go and give us a review and rate us. If you have some feedback, that's fine too. Whatever platform you're listening, follow us, rate us, give us some reviews. That helps get some recognition and gets our name out there.
We do have a Facebook page, Nightmares on the Lost Highway. You can easily find us if you want to communicate with us. If you want to share some possibilities for future podcasts with us, reach out. We want to talk with you guys.